cord cutting session to just cut all that obsessiveness, that dark kind of infatuations we get with the world, with dreams, with what we think we deserve, and how our own ego and narcissism lie to us to say that we are making moral moves when we're actually making some really dark ones. So you can imagine what I'm reviewing. It's season 4 of You. Penn Badgley is killing it with all his Scorpio placements at playing a stalker. And the season 4 is so intriguing. And I got the blessing to see all 10 episodes, so let's just dive in. I think one of the biggest complaints about You is that Joe Goldberg, or at least Badgley's performance as Joe Goldberg, is so freaking charismatic. You like Joe. You pull for him. And his ability to kind of emanate a groundedness and a sweetness that characters that are actually grounded, actually sweet, like one of his first victims, Becca, he seems like a better person than her when he's doing absolute harm. I mean, he's a serial killer, for God's sakes, and Becca was awesome. And he's killed a few good people, a few D-bags, might I add. And I think that's why one of the reasons people might really like season 4, it's kind of like this eat the rich mentality. And it feels like a perfect build-up, kind of lead in to something we always felt and gravitated towards in terms of Joe's image or self-image, which is this kind of the elite don't understand us. Those that have it better don't understand us and don't know what's best for them because they're so privileged and they're so accessed or have so much access. And when you think of some of Joe's past victims, even Love, who was toxic AF, his ability to kind of evade public accountability or dislike for all of his misdeeds and evil deeds comes from the fact that he always seems to attack and end somebody who's privileged, somebody who has more than him, somebody who is self-sabotaging, even if they're great. Like Becca, still mad. And I think that what makes him like, you're like, go get it, Joe, is that this season they're not good people. I mean, they're all wealthy and up their own booties. And he kind of gets warped into this weird murder mystery. But we get the inkling by the decline of his mental health that there is more of Joe's role, and there will be more of Joel's role in all these murders. He's not just the one who hides the bodies. And he's never been. He's the one who makes them. And I think that, like, one thing that I really enjoyed about watching season 4 is that I felt like this season we realized that Joe's charisma is kind of like, it's us being manipulated. He has a very strange, charming self-image. And part of being a narcissist and a psychopath or a sociopath is that ability to kind of make people empathize with you without you necessarily having empathy. And it's kind of like, I have to look like a kind person to receive another person's kindness, but it doesn't mean I'm actually being it. It doesn't mean I actually feel it. I'm just giving you the words and the little acts that will make you give me the most of you. And I found that really fascinating because I always felt like charmed by Joe, but at the same time hyper aware that this is manipulation, We're seeing the world according to Joe. How could we not like him? How could we not agree with him? He does say things and feel things that we all do, especially about the elite, especially about people that we love that can be toxic towards themselves. And every relationship Joe has had has always been based on, I'm trying to heal your flaws. I'm trying to be your person. I'm trying to be there for you and wake you up to your mistakes, which, if you've ever been in a romance, is like at least a good 20 to 50% of what you feel for the person you love. They're not perfect. And sometimes you want to shake them so that they could see how much better they can treat themselves or do for themselves. And it's hard not to have sometimes in relationships a savior complex, but that's where humility comes in. And Joe has a real way of hiding his arrogance as humility because he's soft spoken and he's a reader and he uses really big words for love. But he's a serial killer, nevertheless. And I think, again, going back to one of the biggest complaints about you was whether or not it was actually adapting its vibe or revealing enough, at least in side scenes, that Joe is the bad guy. And in season 4, especially as it progresses, you're definitely going to feel that because Joe is mentally ill. He's not well. And the fact that he goes all the way to London, gets a whole new identity, and he still manages to end up in a murder mystery mess. He still manages to end up stalking another woman. I think this is the first season. Let me go a little faster. This is the first season where I felt like I saw that Joe was terrible and that in some ways the light of him, the goodness of him, is 100% affected by his darkness and shrouded. And it's funny because the theme of this season is, why can't I be a better person? Why can't I get better situations? And it's because you're not a better person. Who you are and who you grow to be manifests what you want to grow in your life around you. And Joe, for however much he tries to be a better person inside, he really relies on his outside as an impetus, as something like, if everything around me changes and gets better, I will. But it's like they say, you can move location, but you can't move away from your problems. And that's what happens. I mean, by episode 1, he already has a new woman in his mind. I'm like, okay. And it's weird because I do feel like Kate is an odd match for Joe in the sense of she's aware of her darkness, her dark upbringing, and love kind of embraced it and celebrated it. And I think what attracts Joe to Kate is this idea that we are good people with darkness that we're trying to avoid, but we can't help to consistently fall into it again and again. And maybe this relationship and you as my partner, as my kind of self-darkness, self-goodness checker could help me get actually better and be the person I want to be. And I think he's one of the first loves that Joe has ever had, if not the first, that has been able to kind of match him in that desire, even though she doesn't know that Jonathan, because that's his new name, is actually Joe Goldberg, serial killer. And it's a really, really fun season. Get excited for these next 5 episodes because they're actually very, 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 very fun. And they're very twisted. And they're kind of I feel like the season progressively gets darker and crazier and kind of has a little bit of a Gossip Girl vibe. More Gossip Girl vibe than the actual reboot of Gossip Girl, which just got canceled, unsurprisingly. Because I think that one thing that Gossip Girl, the reboot, totally missed is that people don't like rich people. Like, the masses aren't the biggest fan of privileged kids getting more privileged. You know, the whole Nepo Baby Vulture article is kind of proof of that, where I think people celebrated this connect the dots that article did at showing that a lot of these kids, whether they're talented or not, had an access that others didn't. And I think the feeling with Nepo babies that this season taps into is that a lot of them aren't talented. They're not the smartest. They're not the kindest for what they get. And yet society runs on this idea that you have to be a morally good person to actually get materially good. And I think that is where Joe's charm lies. He knows or sees himself as a good person that keeps on getting materially swept. And there is his connection, at least his sociopathic connection or sociopathic ability to make people believe he's one of them. Despite his killer instincts and actual acts, he is like us, eat the rich. The privileged don't understand. Life can be so hard. Life can be so unlucky. Relationships are complex. Why don't the ones we love see that we're loving them, that we want them to love themselves more, that we're the best for them? Obsession. Obsession comes from a feeling of lack and a feeling that if you try and try and try the same door, it will open. And that's what this whole season is about. I feel like it is Joe's final attempt to open the same door, which is, I'm a good guy, and despite all my sins and all the terrible things that I've ever done, if I keep opening this same door of obsession and trying to convince people that my darkness can be their light, maybe I'll actually get light. And I'll get that light life I've always wanted. And it's fun to see you season 4, because I think it's this confrontation between Joe's delusion and his reality, his killer instinct and his desire to love and be loved, and the audience kind of finally reconciling that they've been charmed by somebody who's actually sick. And there is a level of sadness to the fact that Joe is good. He does have light. He does have sweetness, but he has an illness that can be really dark and overtake that sweetness and make him do things that by all means are evil. And you'll see that with Marianne. I mean, we've already seen that with his stalker tendencies with her. Oh, Lord. What a session, right? Let me infuse you with some citrine, because I think that the best way to handle obsession is to create a new path for you. And that's what citrine does. It's a fantastic stone to inspire you, to give you hope again in terms of what new can happen to you. And I think sometimes we obsess over things because we don't believe there can be anything better for us. We're not open. Ego is closed. Soul, heart is open. So let's just infuse you with some nice citrine. Ugh. Doesn't that feel good? What a heavy session. Thank God. Thank God I did this. All right. This was ASMR REIKI movie reviews with D'Ange Reviews. Check out my page for more reviews and interviews. I love doing this stuff. It is really, really fun. And more about me. Check out DangeReviews@all.com as well for my written reviews. See you later.